But eventually you can transform Mars into an Earth-like planet. Last way is drop thermonuclear weapons over the poles.
You gotta have all the things necessary to sustain civilization on Mars.
And we will pursue our manifest destiny into the stars, launching American astronauts to plant the stars and stripes on the planet Mars.
For decades, the colonization of Mars has been portrayed as the next inevitable chapter in human history. Scientists, visionaries, and billionaires have turned this idea into a seductive narrative. A new frontier, a chance to start over, a plan B for humanity. But when we take a closer look, we realize this fantasy is still far from reality. This video is an invitation to leave the orbit of marketing and face the facts. No one is going to colonize Mars anytime soon. Not Musk, not Bezos, not any nation with space ambitions. And the reason isn't just technical, it's civilizational. Get ready to understand why Mars, despite being the favorite destination of futuristic imagination, is more like a hostile desert than the cradle of a new humanity. Mars is anything but welcoming. Colonizing Mars may sound like humanity's next natural step. After all, we've explored oceans, climbed mountains, built cities in deserts. Why not cross the solar system and plant our flag on the red planet? The problem is that, unlike anywhere on Earth, Mars was not made to host us. It's not just out of our comfort zone, it's outside the viability zone for human life. Starting with the atmosphere. Mars has an incredibly thin atmosphere, about 1% the density of Earth's at sea level, and what little there is consists of over 95% carbon dioxide. Oxygen? Just trace amounts. This means that without a pressurized suit with oxygen support, a person would die in seconds. But the issue goes beyond breathing. The low atmospheric pressure would cause what's known as the boiling of bodily fluids, literally making your blood boil at room temperature. This is not a metaphor. The average temperature on Mars is minus 63 degrees Celsius, minus 81 degrees Fahrenheit. Near the poles, it can drop to minus 125 degrees Celsius, minus 193 degrees Fahrenheit. That's cold enough to challenge materials, wear down equipment, and freeze entire systems within minutes. Thermal support isn't a luxury, it's a survival condition. And any failure in that system on a Martian base could be fatal in a matter of hours. Now, add another factor to the equation: radiation. On Earth, we're protected by a strong magnetic field and a dense atmosphere that block harmful solar and cosmic particles. Mars has neither. This means the Martian surface is constantly bombarded by ionizing radiation. NASA mission data indicates that an astronaut on Mars would receive, in just 1 year, a radiation dose very close to the acceptable lifetime limit. In the long run, this significantly increases the risks of cancer, genetic mutations, and neurological problems. Solutions like underground habitats covered by meters of Martian soil or shielded domes with special materials are valid technical proposals, but highly complex. They require automated excavation, robotic construction, and constant energy and materials logistics. And all of that on a planet where, so far, we've only landed small robots after years of planning. And what about water? Yes, there is ice on Mars, especially at the poles and possibly beneath the surface in temperate regions. But it's not easily accessible. Extracting it would require deep digging, artificial heating to melt it, and purification to make it drinkable. Every liter would demand energy, time, and robust equipment. And even then, the available quantity would be limited, and usage would have to be extremely controlled, using recycling systems that currently only work experimentally. Food production is another dilemma. Forget the romantic idea of greenhouses overlooking the Martian desert. Constant radiation, lack of fertile soil, and limited water make outdoor farming unfeasible. It would require importing substrates, building pressurized greenhouses with artificial lighting, and controlling temperature, humidity, CO2, and nutrients. As NASA astrobiologist Christopher McKay explains, farming on Mars is more like running a laboratory than a farm. Any failure doesn't just kill a plant, it kills a mission. Additionally, Mars is plagued by global dust storms. These storms can engulf the entire planet for weeks, blocking sunlight and drastically reducing the efficiency of solar panels. This directly affects energy production, heating, agriculture, communications, and even mobility safety. During these storms, visibility drops, sensors fail, and panels are coated in fine dust that clings like glue. Let's suppose, however, that we overcome all of that with advanced technology, that we build efficient shelters, functional greenhouses, robust recycling systems, and artificial intelligence coordinating all vital flows. Even then, one of the most underestimated challenges remains: the human body and mind. Gravity on Mars is about 38% that of Earth. That may not sound like much, but it has massive implications. Astronauts on the International Space Station under microgravity suffer from bone loss, muscle atrophy, vestibular disorientation, and sleep and mood disorders. And they're only up there for a few months, with constant support, real-time communication, and guaranteed return. On Mars, we're talking years, with risk, isolation, and up to a 20-minute communication delay with Earth. And there's more: the absence of nature. No trees, wind, rivers, sounds of life, or living horizons. Just the absolute sterile silence of a dead planet. Numerous studies in space psychology point out that contact with nature, even artificial, is vital for mental health. Long-term deprivation can lead to anxiety, depression, cognitive disorders, and even psychotic breakdowns. An ESA, European Space Agency article on extreme confinement simulations, like the Mars 500 project, showed that even carefully controlled environments with trained crews suffer from fatigue, irritability, internal conflicts, and cognitive performance loss after just a few months. So, as much as Mars has become a symbol of the future, the truth is that it still belongs more to the realm of technical imagination than practical viability. The difference between colonizing an unknown territory on Earth and another planet is colossal. Here, at worst, we've always had air to breathe, soil to plant, water to drink, proper gravity, and life all around us. Mars has none of that. The red planet is not a new beginning waiting to be activated. It is, for now, a desert of impossibilities, a testing ground for robots, probes, and theories. For humans, it remains an environment that literally demands we bring Earth to it, in the form of air, water, food, shelter, and even psychological stability. There's nothing on Mars inviting us to stay, only our own desire to go. And that alone is not enough. During the 20th century, space exploration was a stage for superpower rivalry. It was a race driven by ideology and the need to demonstrate military and technological supremacy. When the Soviet Union launched Sputnik in 1957 and later put Yuri Gagarin into orbit, the United States responded with the Apollo program, landing men on the moon in 1969, more as a political victory than a scientific one. At its core, it was a battle of narratives between political systems. Today, the scene has changed. The Cold War is over, but the space race continues. Only now the main players aren't just nation-states. Mega corporations have entered the stage, and the motivation is no longer purely ideological. It's commercial. Space has become a business, and Mars, in this new context, is the boldest marketing poster of them all. Leading this new era is Elon Musk with his company SpaceX. Musk's message is clear. Humanity needs to become multiplanetary. He argues that a global catastrophe, a nuclear war, environmental collapse, or pandemic could render Earth uninhabitable, and that Mars would be a kind of civilizational life insurance. It's not just about scientific curiosity. It's about long-term survival. Musk's proposal involves sending thousands of people to Mars by the mid-21st century using the Starship system, a fully reusable vehicle theoretically capable of transporting up to 100 passengers per trip. It's an ambitious plan, and SpaceX has conducted promising prototype tests. However, challenges remain immense. Test explosions, schedule delays, and issues with landing and rocket stability are far from resolved. Engineering is only part of the problem. Even if Starship were 100% operational today, it wouldn't solve the bigger dilemma. What happens to humans once they land on Mars? Where will they live? Where will water, air, and food come from? How will they maintain physical and mental health? Colonization requires more than transportation. It demands a self-sustaining infrastructure that replicates, in Martian conditions, all the basics of survival: energy systems, air and water recycling, food production, radiation protection, medical care, everything in a world that, as we've seen, offers no help. Musk's usual answer: we'll develop the technology along the way, but that confidence may be overly optimistic. After all, we're talking about biological, social, and psychological variables that cannot be improvised. This isn't code you can patch with an update. Jeff Bezos, through Blue Origin, presents a less apocalyptic but equally bold vision. He proposes moving industry into space, preserving Earth as a residential and ecological zone. Instead of colonizing Mars, he talks about building orbital habitats based on physicist Gerard K. O'Neill's 1970s concept: massive spinning structures in space, creating artificial gravity and closed ecosystems. It's an ingenious idea, but still entirely theoretical. None of these structures has even been prototyped. The costs would be astronomical, the logistics unimaginable. And again, the technology required to create and maintain a large-scale artificial environment simply doesn't exist yet. Even the International Space Station, built by multiple nations at a cost of tens of billions of dollars, requires constant support from Earth. The idea of an independent space colony, whether in orbit or on Mars, is much further off than most admit. These projects, however, carry immense symbolic and marketing value. By positioning themselves as the architects of humanity's future, Musk and Bezos secure investment, media attention, and global prestige. Their grand promises attract shareholders, enthusiasts, governments, and even public agencies. It's the rise of what we might call interplanetary branding, turning space exploration into a commercial narrative of salvation and progress. But it's important to remember that, as seductive as this story may be, the numbers still don't add up. According to projections by the Planetary Society, a crewed mission to Mars would cost between $500 billion and $1 trillion, depending on the scope. That's several times NASA's annual budget. For comparison, NASA's 2024 budget was around $25 billion. That means it would need to be multiplied many times and sustained for decades. And the return? Practically non-existent. Mars has no valuable mineral reserves worth exploiting economically. Extracting, transporting, and using such resources wouldn't be profitable, even with advanced technology. What Mars offers is prestige, image, and influence. It's a stage, a symbol. Even within NASA, the projections are cautious. Official documents like the Mars Architecture Strategy Working Group Report 2022 indicate that any human presence on Mars in the coming decades will be heavily dependent on supplies from Earth. In other words, even if we manage to establish a base, it will be a fragile extension of Earth, not a self-sufficient colony, a technological bubble surrounded by hostility. Physicist Michio Kaku sums it up well. Mars may one day be colonized, but it will be by robots and autonomous systems long before humans. The idea of a human colony operating as an independent city at scale would require revolutions in energy, biotechnology, artificial intelligence, advanced construction, and long-term governance. It's not impossible, but it's far beyond our current stage. And here lies a point rarely discussed, but essential: motivation. The real reason behind the rush to conquer Mars may not be about saving humanity, but securing narrative dominance. In an increasingly chaotic world, marked by economic instability, environmental collapse, and political polarization, tech elites are offering a new utopia, a fresh start, a better place. But that place, for now, remains a projection. Mars is not a new home, not yet. It's a blank canvas where everyone paints their dreams or their interests. Let's imagine for a moment that humanity overcomes all technological, environmental, and physiological obstacles, that we successfully land on Mars, build functional shelters, produce water and food, protect colonists from radiation, and even maintain their physical and mental health. That would be a historic feat. But the real question comes afterward. Who would govern Mars? The idea of colonizing a new planet often comes with dreams of a fresh start, a new world without the errors of the past, where we could write a new story. But that hope quickly runs into a familiar obstacle: political conflict and the will to power. And there's no reason to believe it would be left behind, even millions of kilometers from Earth. Legally, it all begins with the Outer Space Treaty of 1967, signed by over 100 countries, including all major space powers. The treaty states that no celestial body, moon, Mars, asteroids, can be appropriated by any nation. No country may claim sovereignty over parts of space. In theory, this prevents Mars from being divided up like colonial lands of the past. But in practice, as always, things get more complicated. The treaty says nothing about private companies, and that's where ambiguity begins. If a company, say SpaceX, establishes a base on Martian soil, who regulates it? The company itself? The country where the company is based? An international consortium? Or no one at all? And if the base expands, housing hundreds of people, developing agriculture, manufacturing, education, and healthcare, does it remain just a corporate facility or become something more, even more? If a crime occurs on Mars, an assault, sabotage, or even homicide, who has jurisdiction? What penal code applies? Who enforces justice? These questions still lack definitive answers. Space law, though advanced in some technical areas, is still in its infancy when it comes to sovereignty, citizenship, and extraterrestrial governance. Legal scholar Joanne Gabrinovich, one of the world's foremost experts in space law, puts it this way: we are building infrastructure in space faster than we're building the laws to govern it. And this asymmetry can be dangerous. The absence of a clear governance structure opens the door to abuse, conflict, and even modern forms of corporate authoritarianism. Imagine a colony run by a private company, isolated from Earth, where everything, food, water, oxygen, shelter, depends on that company. This gives the corporation total power over the inhabitants, who could become hostages to economic, political, or ideological decisions. A Martian corporate state where rules are defined not democratically, but by employment contracts, algorithms, and financial interests. Now add the current geopolitical climate to the equation. China has already demonstrated clear space ambitions. The Tianwen-1 mission successfully landed a rover on Mars in 2021, and the country has announced plans for manned missions in the 2030s. The United States still leads in logistics and funding. The European Union supports cooperative programs, and India, the UAE, and even Russia have their eyes on the Red Planet. If different countries, with distinct political systems, strategic interests, and cultures, establish presences on Mars simultaneously, a new arena of competition will emerge. And that competition won't just be technological. It could also be ideological, legal, and territorial. Imagine two bases, one Chinese and one American, operating near each other. What kind of cooperation would exist? Who defines exclusion zones? How are disputes over resources, like subsurface ice or advantageous terrain, on a planet with no official borders? Any territorial claim is contestable. And where there is contest, there is potential for conflict. There's also the issue of communication lag. A message between Mars and Earth takes 5 to 20 minutes, depending on orbital position. That means no real-time supervision. Any urgent decision, a medical emergency, a technical accident, internal tension, will have to be handled locally. And that inevitably leads to operational autonomy. That autonomy could be the start of something bigger. Political autonomy. Martian colonists, after years of isolation under extreme conditions, may start to see themselves as a distinct society, with their own interests, needs, and minimal affinity with Earthlings It's the same phenomenon that historically led to the independence of colonies, just on a planetary scale. A 2024 article in the Harvard Law Review suggests that early Martian colonies will face a classic dilemma: submission or rebellion. Either they accept remote governance imposed from 225 million kilometers away, or they create their own systems. Both paths come with risks. The former could foster resentment and forced compliance. The latter could lead to collapse due to disorganization or internal power struggles. The governance of Mars, therefore, won't just be a technical or legal issue. It will be a profound test of humanity's political maturity, a magnified mirror of our current dilemmas. How do we balance freedom and authority? How do we protect individuals without creating anarchy? How do we ensure equity without falling into total control? Maybe before we dream of a new world, we need to learn how to handle our own. Because if we bring to Mars the same models of exploitation, inequality, and conflict that divide us here, the red planet won't be a new beginning. It'll be a repetition on another stage, with less oxygen and more consequences. The colonization of Mars is an old dream, but still a distant one. Physical, technical, economic, and political limitations form an almost insurmountable barrier at this point in history. There's value in dreaming of new worlds. That's what drives science and imagination. But there's a real danger in using those dreams as an excuse to neglect the tangible reality of Earth, where climate crisis, social inequality, and political instability are urgent challenges. Mars might be the future, but not today, and maybe not even this century. If this topic interests you, be sure to watch our video, "Why Can't We Just Print Money to Pay Off the Debt?" A reflection on how even the simplest seeming solutions hide deep dilemmas. Because, whether in economics or space, there's no magic, only difficult choices. Thank you for watching.